Well, the great part about having your own podcast is you get to pump up the tyres of your own team. And so now I'm going to go fully unbiased on the fact that the Highlanders can win Super Rugby Pacific. And Joey Wheeler is the man, our southern correspondent out of Dunedin, who's going to help me do this. We're going to look at the roster. We're going to look at the draw. We're going to look at what they've got coming up. The fact they're at home pretty much, if we know, for the first 3 weeks. Maybe based in Queenstown, the odd game in Dunedin. Joey, but bottom line, it's great to have you with us. Looking forward to chatting through the course of the year on the Breakdown Pod. When you look at the Highlanders, what gives you the confidence and belief in the fact that you're almost prepared to put your hard-earned down? The Highlanders can be right there.
Oh, look, it's always a tough ask for the Highlanders, right? They never go into these competitions as favourites, Goldy. When you've only got 3 All Blacks on your roster compared to the 17 or 20 that the Crusaders and Blues seem to be able to put in their teams. But I think that the confidence I have in this team is that they've built a team over the past couple of years where guys have developed nicely under Coach Tony Brown. I think of the likes of an Ethan de Groot, a Shannon Frizzell, a Falau Fakatava, Aaron Smith, obviously. And these guys are coming of age. They're coming into their best form. I think a few of those guys need to have big years for the Highlanders to succeed at the pointy end of the competition. But as always with this Highlanders side, teams, if they underestimate them at their peril. And that's when the Highlanders are at their absolute best. And I think teams will do that because you look at that pack, yeah, there's not many names, but you've got a guy like Jermaine Ainsley coming back after a serious ankle injury last year, the big tight end prop that's played it, he's been capped for the Wallabies, and he'll be looking for a massive year. And I think the loss of Ash Dixon, yes, that's massive in terms of his leadership, but I think the recruitment of Andrew Mathalao and Reece Marshall is really savvy. Here's 2 guys that have, played a lot of footy between them. Reece Marshall, worldly, played a lot up in Europe, so he brings a lot of experience and a lot of steel to that pack. And then the second row, Paddy Parkinson being out for the year, that's a huge loss. But I think, they've got the makings of a really nice side, but it's all going to sit pretty heavily on Aaron Smith and Mitch Hunt's shoulders to drive them around the park and to get them into good areas. But they're definitely a sniff, Goldie, and as you know, me and you, we always are very, very hopeful that this Highlanders team can tip up the big dogs.
Well, but I go back and look at last year's Super Rugby Trans-Tasman and the fact they were able to make the final. I think the nature of the way they play the game certainly suits against the fact we are going to be playing against the Australian teams, the Fijian Drua and the Moana Pacific. And so this is not Super Rugby Aotearoa. This is not with the fact that every single week they're going to come up against that quality opposition that is incredibly strong up front, which is incredibly physical, which tests the experience and depth of the Highlanders. You're going to get a situation where there are all these other games where they can go out and not just win, but win with bonus points. Now, you win with bonus points, all of a sudden you get some advantages, some key advantages at the pointy end of the competition, which is about getting playoff positions where you can get home games. So I like the nature of the group. One of the other reasons I like is the fact they don't have 3 All Blacks. They don't have this huge number of players whose focus throughout the course of a season is on, how do I get myself reselected again? How do I get myself back in the frame? Okay, there's an element of distraction that comes with that, and also that they're not on any sort of restrictions. There's the situation where they're having to rest them for games. We've seen already that the Crusaders have lost both Richie Mo'unga and Ethan Blackadder for the first 3 games. That will affect their performance. I think for the Highlanders, you look at their group, I love the fact that across the board, in all of the areas, there's like-for-like experience in most cases. There's like-for-like ability. So you're not having that significant drop down. And I look at, when you think about Fatuli Paya, you've got C.O. Tompkinson, you've got Thomas Umanga Jensen, Nani Punavai and Scott Gregory. There's 5 guys who can all do the job for you. So when you get someone who takes a knock, who takes a week off, you're replacing them with someone I think who can go out and perform. Now, the loss of Josh Ioane was obviously, for a lot of Highlanders fans, I think they're concerned, going, all of a sudden you lose a talent. Unfortunately for Josh, there wasn't a consistency of performance, which I think put pressure on the group. Now the consistency is, well, Mitch Hunt knows it's his group, it's his team. You've got good old Marty Banks rolls around again. He can't help himself. He just keeps lingering in the south, doesn't he? Down in Invercargill, just toiling away, does old Marty, and says, I'm available, I'm here.
You know what you're going to get with Marty, and we saw that with the Stags. He's always performs whenever it comes to those clutch moments, Goldie. He's the guy that you want coming in. And if Mitch has a little injury where he takes 2 or 3 weeks off, you know that Marty is going to do a fantastic job, understands the way the Highlanders play, understands the DNA of this side and the way that these guys want to play. 2 guys you mentioned there that I'm really excited to see this year, Fatuli Paya and Thomas Umaga Jensen. Those 2 guys both missed the whole season last year through injury. And I think that was one area in that Highlanders side where they were, Scott Gregory did a job for them at 12, but he's not your blockbusting 12 that's going to break the line and give that offload. I think Thomas Umaga Jensen, from all reports down here, is looking in some sort of nick. I don't want to put the mockers on him because he's a horrid run with injury, but man, if that guy can string games together, he is going to be in the conversation for that next step, because here's a guy who's 115, 116 kilo, 6'2", the ability to carry hard on the gain line, bust through tackles and give that offload. That's the ingredients that the All Blacks have been missing. That's the ingredients that this Highlanders side have been missing. And then with a guy like Fatuli, we've seen what he's done for the Mako. We saw what he did for the Crusaders when he was there the previous year. If those 2 can combine and get their combination going really, really well, they're going to be a serious.
You've been talking to Brownie. You've been talking to Brownie because he's been in my ear about the fact he knows exactly that combination you're talking about, and you've seen it firsthand. You've seen it live. Brownie's been in my ear as well, saying, you know what, he just hopes they can stay healthy because that, like you say, that punch in the midfield, that ability to get them some sort of momentum. I'm fascinated to see how they play. The fact that Clark Dermody obviously did a really good job last year when he was interim head coach. Brownie's come back, and when he had that responsibility, so all of a sudden you feel as though there's a real growth in the coaching staff as well, in the way that they're impacting the players. You talked about a couple of loose forwards, and Shannon Frizzell. It's a massive year for Shannon Frizzell. You know, after all of the challenges he faced in 2021, but the impact he has at Super Rugby is significant. And I think for him, you look at the combination of players we had last year when Sam Cane was out. Billy Harmon was a standout player. He was a guy that came down from the Crusaders who really was just missing opportunity. That's all he was missing, was getting the chance to play some time. James Lynch's on the other fact, relentless. So once again, I come back to that fact. Marino Michele Tu'u, what they add, what they bring. Hugh Renton will be better for another year of Super Rugby. And then you bring in a couple of old dogs, the Evans boys. They rock on down to Dunedin, and you're bringing that level of experience. Gareth Evans, to me, has been an underrated player for a long, long time in terms of how you impact in 3 loose forward positions. So there's always going to be that challenge. How confident are you, though, that particularly at scrum and line-out time, areas of expertise, they're going to be solid enough? Because they just need to be solid. You know, they just need to be able to provide a platform. They'll be good enough, well and truly, against the Australian teams, but we're talking the first 7 or 8 rounds are going to be against New Zealand quality teams. Moana Pacifica's got a bit of time. They've got some developing to do. Can that front 5 do enough up front?
That's always the challenge, right? Against, I think, the Crusaders, Blues, and probably the Chiefs. Definitely the Crusaders and Blues. Everyone knows that they use their set piece as, you know, their threat in terms of building pressure to then get penalties to then put them in the right end of the field. I think the Highlanders last year had one of the best performing lineouts in the competition, Goldie. So you mentioned Clark Dermody. He is a smart operator in that respect. He's really shrewd with his plays week to week. He mixes things up. His specials in terms of their maul specials, always something different happening, different pitches to throw those teams like the Crusaders and Blues off because they are so set piece dominant. But yeah, an old wily campaigner like Gareth and Bryn, they're going to be massive to that group to make sure that set piece is operating at its peak. And I think we talked about Jermaine Ainsley earlier. He's going to be a huge part of making sure that scrum, and Ethan de Groot as well, carrying on his form that we saw him take off to make sure that their set piece does it performs well, and if not get parity, dominate. So that'll be their mindset going into these games. They want to dominate teams with their set piece, but they know that they're up against those bigger sides, and they're probably a few kilos down, but what they do technically and what they do in terms of their preparation is world class. And I know Clark puts a lot of time and energy into that. So yeah, they'll be well prepared, mate. And I think that those two guys that you alluded to, Gareth and Bryn, will be a massive part of that. And I think Gareth's influence on that loose forward group, because there's always going to be injuries. There's always going to be guys coming out. You'll see him play all those three positions, I think, throughout the year.
Lastly, for a guy who did enough hanging out in the back three to understand what it looks like from the back, roaming around, a range of skills, Joey, who's going to put up their hand and say, I am the number one fullback for the Highlanders in 2022? Because to me, that's an area where they're going to need someone to, in some ways, maybe play above themselves, given the position and how important it is.
Yeah, it's a challenging one, isn't it? Like you look at the guy that was there week in, week out last year was Jordan Ariki, and he's obviously out for the season this year. This is the one position since Ben Smith's left that the Highlanders have struggled to find a constant to put on that 15 jersey. And I suppose everyone always compares the person that puts that jersey on to Ben Smith as well, which probably isn't fair, because no one's he's a once in a generational player, apart from yourself, Goldy, once he took over your
where is he? Where is Ben? Where is Ben there?
Oh, Ben's floating around Dunedin. He's floating around mainly on the golf course, mate.
So has no one knocked on his door? I mean, maybe I should give him a call and see what he's up to.
There's that opportunity there, if there are injuries, that Ben Smith could be available for this side to come in as an injury replacement. But obviously, the hands are tied in terms of at the moment. But yeah, I think the guy.
You've got me going now. I mean, we're favourites to win the title if that happens. You know that. I mean, all of a sudden, the odds change. I better, the moment we get word, let me know so I get on the TAB account and go, right, I'm in before.
All my favourites. I think
is it? I think
it's Sam Gilbert, mate. For me, Sam Gilbert will get the first crack. A guy that I think we'd love to see get back to his best. Everyone would, is Solomon Alomalo. We just haven't seen. I'm not sure. I've heard some rumours that he might be struggling a little bit with his mental health at the moment, and that's really, really sad. But I'd just love to see him get out there, because we all know how talented and how good he could be. And if he is struggling in that respect, I hope he can get back to 100% fitness and get back out on that field, because, man, that guy, when he left the Chiefs, he was one of the best attacking threats. And him under the roof would be something special if he could capture some of that form. But for starting off, I see Sam Gilbert doing a job for them there. From all accounts, in the preseason game last week against the Crusaders, he did a great job in controlling the backfield. Brilliant with his kicking game, which is obviously an area of his game he needed to develop. So, yeah, Sam Gilbert for me will get the nod for the early rounds.
Well, you're going to be well and truly close to it down in Dunedin, because all the action's going to be happening in the first 3 weeks down in the south. Can't wait for it, mate. I'm looking forward to catching up during the year. I mean, bottom line, though, if you had to put your hard-earned, for this Highlanders team to be in the playoff picture, to do enough to be one of those teams that makes us into the knockout rounds, how confident are you?
Oh, very. I think the Highlanders side, they haven't missed the playoffs in the last year. I can't remember since,
exactly.
Probably, so you've got to say that, on paper, they've only got, like we always talk about, but underestimate them at their peril, and teams still do that just because they don't have the rock stars across their side. So, yeah, I think that they'll definitely be in that quarterfinal picture. Where they form that, I think they'll be definitely in the top half. So, yeah, they just need to keep healthy, especially in some key positions. But I'm just really excited to see a couple of those guys come back from injury, namely Falau Fakatava, Thomas Umaga-Jensen, and Fatuli Paya. Those are the 3 guys that everyone out there should be watching to see how well they go this season.
All right, Joey, that's fantastic, mate. You're part of the very first Breakdown podcast. It was always going to come to you, to be fair. Come down south, get it where it really counts. I'll see you during the year. We'll talk to you soon. Cheers, mate.
All right, mate. Thanks.
Gold.